everybody. My name, can you hear me? Yes. I think I'll take this off. But you guys, yeah, when we sit there, we have to wear a mask. Sorry about that. My name is Joy Mcintyre. I'm on the board of the Sarasota Music Archive, among other things. And I'm pleased to welcome you all. Wonderful crowd today. Terrific. Yeah, almost no place to sit. I wanted to tell you just a little bit about the Sarasota Music Archive. How many of you have been upstairs? A lot of you. Marvelous, okay. We present these programs for the public, you know, through the generous help of our donors. And we really appreciate every way that you support us and enable us to keep doing this. There is a sheet that you can pick up that talks about this piano series that was arranged by Joe Holt, who sadly can't be here today as a doctor's appointment, although he may show up anytime. And it tells you about the piano series, and on the back is the winter series. So I hope I can see you there as well. Today we are thrilled to have Tom Perviance join us. He brought a lot of boosters. You know, how long have you been in Sarasota?
6 years.
6 years. And look what fans he has. This is amazing. And he's such a genial fellow, and I hear he's a good cook, too. Is that right? But, oh, Renee knows. He has had a wonderful career as a performer and also as a pedagogue. He has his own studio here in Sarasota. He's performed really from shore to shore in Hawaii. For instance, if I can find the reference, he played concerts for the 200th birthdays of Chopin and Liszt, for instance. He performed Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue with the Pops Orchestra of Sarasota and Bradenton, and has been one of the much lauded pianists in Piano Grand for 4 seasons. Everybody loves Piano Grand, yes? Tom is going to tell you a little bit more about himself in his presentation. He did a lot of work in Germany, and that's a connection that we share. So I'm delighted to present to you Tom Perviance, and he will take the floor.
I'm going to pull speaker's priority and play first so that I'm done and don't have to think about that or be nervous about that anymore. And kudos to my students who are going to play later for us. I will unmask, and don't gasp, I look a little better today, but I have my Halloween fright mask on already. It's very red, but it's much better. But I should explain, I'm not contagious or anything of the sort. I've had, as many of you might know or have experienced, that 2-week regime of cream that takes away any precancerous cells from your face. And I had a choice of doing it in time for Piano Grand or inflicting it on you guys, so I'm sorry, but I said, I don't want to look like this on the stage of the Opera House. So I waited until the day after Piano Grand to start, was able to stop a couple of days ago, and now it's calming down. So that's why the bright look. Sorry about that. I have to sort of acknowledge further, I came to Sarasota 6 years ago. It's just a fun story. Met Lee Ross, had been told by numerous people, the first person you meet when you come to Sarasota is Lee Ross. So I did, and all that, and she invited me to judge the Suncoast piano competition, or high school competition. And I saw on the communications I was getting that there was a judge by the name of Joy Mcintyre. And I thought to myself, well, it's just not possible it's the Joy Mcintyre that I knew in the late 70s and early 80s. Well, sure enough, we met that day at the competition, and it was. And I had the extreme pleasure of hearing Joy sing many leading roles, including Elektra by Strauss and Die Frau Schatten at the Bavarian State Opera, because I lived in Munich for a while. And Joy was one of the reigning prima donnas there, and it was great. It was such a fun connection to actually see her again after so many years and think, how did you possibly end up in Sarasota? But we've been friends since, and we've had a lot of fun together. So I'm going to start I had a very lovely experience in 2009 when I had the opportunity to go out to Palm Springs, California, and spend a day studying with the legendary American pianist Earl Wild. He was one of the most famous American pianists of the 20th century, and I had learned to play the Rachmaninoff Second Sonata and wanted to study it further with someone who really would have special insight. And I discovered that Mr. Wild had been a friend of Rachmaninoff's, and particularly Rachmaninoff's wife after Rachmaninoff died. And I thought, well, I can't get much closer to the source than that. So we went out and I had a wonderful, wonderful time. I am suspicious that I might have been his last piano lesson because I saw him in September and he died in January at the age of 94. He was in a wheelchair and on oxygen, in fact, the day we spent together. But it was a great experience. He was very well known for transcribing lots of music. And he made transcriptions of about 13 or 14 of Rachmaninoff's songs, including the very famous Vocalese and some other very popular songs. So I have my autograph score by Mr. Weil, and I learned to play a couple of them. So I'm going to share the two of them, Do Not Grieve and The Floods of Spring, with you this morning. the mic now, thank you. Let me get switched from playing to speaking mentality. One of the things I'm going to mention later, I'll put up some slides that will help. Let's see if we go to, let's see, we can do it this way. There we go. This doesn't want to go into performance mode, so you're going to see some different things up there. One of the things I'm going to mention a little later on is that one of the difficulties the adult students may have, microphone, is having enough patience. From the first time I heard that piece, I just loved it. Mr. Wilde has a recording of all these great pieces. And I thought, boy, I'm going to play that. I'm going to learn it and do it. It's going to be fun, make a nice encore to play sometimes. Well, 5 years later, I had still not ever actually played it in public. It just, parts of it eluded me, confidence in it eluded me, and I spent 5 years, not consistently, of course, with big gaps, but more than 5 years before I ever finally thought, well, okay, I might be ready to play this in front of somebody. So, patience, patience. Now, I put something up on the screen, it applies to me, but I want to make a special thank you to 5 of my students who are here to play today. This is so very true. You don't know what it's like unless you do it yourself. To get up in front of an audience and do anything, really. Speak, play, perform. It's all quite nerve-wracking and quite difficult. How many people here are actually pianists today? Play the piano in any form or other? Good, I figured it would be most everybody. Who else would be interested in this topic, really? So, anyway, my sincere thanks to my friends and students who are going to share their music with you in a little while. Let's see if we can get this going. Sorry, I'm better at the piano than I am at computers. Okay, here's a quick, short bullet list. Can those of you see over the piano lid? You're okay, good. Okay, of the things we're going to talk about, I'm going to give you a little bit of my background, which is not self-promotion. It really is, in my opinion, very informative about why I am the kind of teacher I am and the way that I pursue my teaching. So I think it's relevant to go through a quick and abbreviated history of my piano studies and things. We'll talk about some of the different kinds of adult students, the advantages of playing music, the disadvantages or challenges of playing music, and then some tips at the end, and of course if there are questions. And I don't actually mind being interrupted at any time if there's a question, so please feel free. I had a really very probably typical experience as a young piano student growing up in rural Virginia. Very rural Virginia, southeastern corner near the Tidewater area. I had musical talent. I had 2 musical grandmothers, so it was not sort of shocking to my family that some of the kids would show up with some musical talent. But I had I hesitate to be unkind and say bad training or poor training, but in a small town like that, the only people who played music frequently were the pastors' wives at the local churches, because they played hymns and accompanied services and things. And so I went through a succession of pastors' wives, piano teachers, and within a year or 2 of each one, I would sort of outplay them. So it became like time to move on and keep moving on. And I did not, at what is a very crucial time, have a really fine or specific or methodical training at all. So it's too bad, because it's very important to have that early on. In high school, I was steered to a lovely lady who had been Juilliard trained. Her husband had been a college president there in Virginia, and she had a lot to offer, and I was a typical unruly teenager who didn't much care. You know, in those days, if I practiced for an hour, I thought I had just done her a big favor. You know, I hate to say it like that. But again, it wasn't a very disciplined or terribly productive time. But I did manage to get into college. And in college, I met a very, very dynamic, dramatic, intense, like nothing else I had ever experienced kind of teacher. This was a Greek woman who had spent her formative years at the Paris Conservatory, lived in Europe, had a major concert career, was a pupil of Edmund Fischer, some of you may know that name, a very famous player, conductor, and pedagogue of the 1900s, taught people like Alfred Brendel when they were younger, that sort of thing. And she just, of course, whipped me into shape instantly through that very strict discipline. And I caught the bug enormously because I think latent, that talent and that desire in me was latent. And I mean, by second month of the semester, freshman year, I was practicing 6 or 7 hours a day and loving every minute of it and doing everything she said and just following it to the T and doing it. So I did start to make progress and I did develop. And I had 4 intense years and went through a real regime of catch-up sort of training. The things I had not had with scales and arpeggios and technical exercises and things like that. Ultimately, I feel that her technical approach was somewhat flawed. I hate to say it like that, but I might as well be honest. And it had a fair amount of, I was stiff and a little bit tight in my playing, and it caused problems and things like that. But we spent quite a few years together, and even while I did graduate work as a singer in opera and music history, I continued to study piano. But a few years later, after trying to play concerts and travel and get jobs and all that sort of thing, I decided I needed a new teacher. I found another gentleman. I was still in the area of Princeton, New Jersey. And this gentleman just literally sort of rocked my world because I thought I knew a lot. I was, of course, just like you are when you get out of college, you've learned it. You know it. And instead, I discovered really, he challenged every single concept I had about both piano technique, playing the notes, and musical thought. Everything. I mean, I think that must have been, in retrospect, his goal, was to sit there and challenge, no matter what I said or did or tried, he challenged it. And it was really a painful year when we got started, but it was a good year and a very beneficial year in the long run that I had to learn and challenge and consider new concepts. So around this time, I was on the faculty of the Westminster Conservatory of Music. The Westminster Conservatory in Princeton was the extension type division of Westminster Choir College, where I attended my undergraduate work. And they offered all sorts of music instruction to the community and from children through seniors and adults, and I taught all kinds of students there piano and music history. During this time, I came to my third and final teacher there, a marvelous, marvelous lady by the name of Anna Bronstein, who was from Chile and a protege and pupil of Claudio Arau. And so that was a major, I love to say that lineage, I think if I'm right, goes all the way back to Liszt and beyond. So I feel some kind of, at least mentally, connection there that makes me very happy to have come through that tradition. But Anna did 2 major things. She sort of smoothed out a lot of the flaws in my technique. Again, things that took years to change because I was already, maybe 30 years old or something. And it's difficult to make changes in. It's obviously not advisable sometimes, but you have to do it. And the other thing she did, which the other teachers had not done for me, was that it was her obligation to force me to discover who I was as a pianist and as a musician. I have to say, both the previous teachers, as dynamic and dramatic and wonderful as they were in some ways, were trying to make in me a copy of them. They were training me to be, to play, to think as they did. And there's some benefit in it, particularly in the first teacher, because I gave undying, devotion and acceptance because I had never had anything like this with that background in Virginia. But at any rate, it was obviously a much finer quality to be given by Emma, who helped me make my own musical mind, find my personality, find whatever music I wanted to play, was attracted to, and then give me the technical tools to actually start to do the things that I felt as a musician. So that's sort of complicated but a very important process that I came to very late in life. You know, in today's world especially, young people are identified with talent. If they are singled out in a place where it's possible, they're put on a very strong and powerful routine of, you know, all the scales and all the etudes and all the exercises and everything like that. By a very young age, they are formed. And there's something wonderful about that if the training is good and solid and proper. Because then it's instilled, it's like, you know, they say, if you learn the language before puberty, if you learn a foreign language. I remember the first time I played a concert in Geneva, I stayed with some lovely people, and there were 2 kids, like under the age of 10, who spoke 4 languages. And my mind was sort of boggled that to them it was nothing, it was effortless. But anyway, that ability to be trained early and thoroughly is really terrific. And it's somewhat, every now and then you hear a master teacher say, well, if you don't have it all together by the time you're 16, you're not going to really make it. As brutal as that sounds, and there is some element of truth in that position sometimes, in the level of competitiveness today of the top echelon of pianists. Some of you have probably been following the Chopin competition just wrapped up last weekend, and of course they streamed everything online. Wonderful concerts, and a young man from Canada won first prize. And you know, you can only imagine the thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, probably starting when he was 3 or 4, that brought him to that moment. This sudden fame and instant fame, you know, it's not really his. Yeah, Joy.
The audience might like to know that the Warsaw Philharmonic is coming to Sarasota.
Yes.
This season, April the 4th, with the Chopin winner.
Oh, I didn't realize the winner would be. He's going to be playing here. Awesome.
Instead of Malafia.
I sat, not sat, I was actually in the shower last night, and I don't like to be in the shower and not have music on. So I actually hit YouTube and found a video of the Chopin winner playing the variations on La Ci del Reclamando, which is a very famous Chopin piece, and it was, of course, absolutely brilliant and wonderful to see. So, let me see where I am. I haven't looked at my notes in a long time. Let's see, Westminster faculty, all of that. Oh, yeah, and one thing I want to say, let's see if I can find it. Don't tell me it's not here. I'm not sure. There it is. Regarding Anna Bronstein, the lady I mentioned that I admire so much and helped me so much, when I need a good pair of ears or some advice, I still go to her. So when we talk about the senior pianist, I'm about to turn 70, and I'm still taking piano lessons. As is, and then it makes me, this is one of my favorite music quotes of all time up there, and I think it applies so beautifully to all of us to think, okay, so the legendary Pablo Casals asked why he was practicing at 90, because I think I'm getting better. I think I'm still learning. So if he needed it, if he still practiced, if he still, I don't imagine he had a teacher at that moment in time, but nevertheless, that always trying to learn and always trying to better yourself. It's a good way not to be bored in life or to be boring in life, is to always be learning and doing new things. But one of the other things in that long progression then to playing and study was life's practicalities got in the way, and I had a more than 10-year hiatus where I didn't play the piano at all. I completely stopped. I had the wonderful support of my parents. I had traveled to Europe. I had been playing concerts, you know, trying to make your way and do things like that, and in the United States. But eventually you have to grow up and you have to pay your bills and you have to have health insurance and you have to have a life somewhere else. And music is a very hard place to do that sometimes. So I had another career completely, and I literally sort of very consciously put the lid down on my piano, and it stayed down for 10 years. I had great success in my other career. It's why I can afford to live in Sarasota retired today, because I made some money and put it away and that kind of thing. But I took a big break, and I find that having had that experience, I came back, I went to Anna, I said, I haven't played in 10 years. Do you even think I can get, she said, of course you can get back. It was more than a year. And in fact, some of those Hawaiian concerts were some of the first concerts I played back in public. I wanted to go as far away from everybody that I knew as I could, so that nobody would hear me play those first couple of concerts back in the public sphere. But at any rate, I did come back, and I think having had that experience immediately identifies with many of my students who had marvelous music in their lives as children, perhaps in high school, even into college, some of them. And then, of course, life intervenes, and you have families, and you have careers, and you must then move away from music possibly for a long time. And so when I have students who are coming back, they come and they say, I haven't played in 30 years, I haven't played in 35 years really, and I want to start again. I understand what that's about, I understand that, and I think I can share with them the perspective of what it means to take that long to get yourself back. So I think all of that, longer than I meant to be, but it sets the stage for who I am as a teacher today, the perspective that I have, the different kinds of experiences, having to actually learn, unlearn, relearn, change major technical aspects of my approach to the piano. I'm not sure it made me a great pianist, but it has given me a very strong, clear understanding intellectually of what it is that I teach and try to teach, and how things happen and how they work at the piano and all of that. I think some of those flaws from early childhood always remain. They always stay embedded somewhere in the back of your fingers. But nevertheless, I think for teaching, it really helps me understand how it all works and how things come together and how I can help other people move forward. And then if you think you haven't learned and done it all enough, I would say even that COVID pushed me one level further, because with over a year more of lessons being online, FaceTime, and Zoom, you couldn't demonstrate, you couldn't touch the student's hand or arm, you couldn't play something on the piano in quite the same way. And so it advanced the skill at verbalization of what your concepts are. How does one touch the piano? How does one play the piano? How does one interpret music? It all had to be primarily verbal in that, during that whole COVID experience. And as annoying as it was, I actually took some good points away from that experience. I think it did not hurt. It may have even helped me a little bit as a teacher, which I'm happy to say done. Let's look ahead. Let's see if I can find my slides. Okay, we've got a number of different kinds of students. And get my stuff out of the way. The most obvious that I've met here is the beginning adult. I think people come to this time in life. The challenges of careers and families are primarily, at least we hope to some degree, behind us and under control. And you start to think of what are things you want to do? What are the different things? How are you going to fill your time? How are you going to be stimulated? How are you going to enjoy your retirement years? And so I do have a number of absolute new beginners, people who began piano in their 60s and 70s, like that. And I would like to take this moment to invite my good friend and student Brian DIxon to come up and say just one word of 1 minute about himself and how he came to piano and lessons, and then he's going to be the bravest of us all to play first. Rack up and comfortable.
Thank you, Tom. And it became very clear to me, listening to Tom, that my job here is to lower the bar for the rest, which I will be able to do in spades. I grew up in Northern Ireland, the oldest of a large family, and left school at 15 and went to work and learned a trade. Millwrighting, an old millwright out of the Industrial Revolution.
A little louder.
Closer to the microphone.
Closer to the mic, right. So I learned the trade of millwright at an old mill out of the Industrial Revolution. We were church-going people, and I had an opportunity to attend a Bible school in the States, so I came over. And when I finished that, I realized I didn't know much, so then I went to university and came to Boston to go to seminary. And as a minister, which I spent 42 plus years, I was very fortunate to be surrounded by good music. And I think of at least 3 of the organists that the churches I served had. They were much better than we deserved, but that's often the case. And I was deeply appreciative, and I didn't need to worry about music. I loved it, but I was also very much involved in what the medieval mystics would call the active life, the via activa, rather than the contemplative life. I played a lot of sports and activities. And when I approached retirement, I thought, am I going to do this or not? And so I decided, and through a friend, I found a teacher who is germane to the topic, who taught only children, or not adults. She was very uncomfortable, and she taught my friend, who was an adult, only as a favor for her. Then I found another teacher who was not very good. One of the suborganists we had one day, I was talking to him, he was also a gifted teacher. He said, don't be afraid to change teachers until you find the right person. And I was lucky to find a neighbor who was in her 90s, out of Juilliard. And she taught me, I think, from she was 91 to 97.
Oh my God.
She just reached 100 last year, and I haven't talked to her. I hope maybe she's still alive, and I'll call her today and tell her I performed in public for the first time. Anyway, and then I moved to Florida and started with another teacher who also only taught children. There is a big difference. Tom knows more about it than I do. And then someone told me about Tom Purviance, and he took me on. And I am often humbled when I think of his ability, and then listening to my mucking around in the piano. I am faithful about practice, but anyway, I'm happy to be here, and this is worse than preaching. The selections, maybe Tom did announce it.
They have a program, yeah.
Gymnopedia number 1. Sati.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's going to stay up.
some of you can, of course, but putting yourself in that position for music at this time in your life. It's a great experience. It really, we'll talk about it in a few minutes, it can enhance your life in a tremendous way. It's really valuable. Just to move quickly through the other kinds of students that I see, probably the most common is the returning adult senior student who has had, like I said, a lot of music and then a lot of life in the middle time, and then finally later in life has time to come back to it. I know some people that didn't play for 20 years, 30 years, or even 40 years, but then there's always that little thing in the back of their mind they want to return. So we have those students, and it's fun to see them re-engage with music and start to learn again and move forward and learn new things. And then, of course, maybe sometimes for me, selfishly, the most fun is the student who's managed to keep piano or music in their lives throughout their entire life. And so they're just on that lifelong curve of always learning and always growing and always expanding. And they play right on through the years and they want to continue, but perhaps learning new music, new styles, new technical possibilities and things at the keyboard. So those are the kinds of students I'm seeing primarily as seniors and enjoying very much. Let's see if we can get this one up. Why I only teach adult students at this point in life? Because I never really liked children a whole lot. I did teach them. It's an enormous challenge, and it requires different skills than I'm drawing on now to teach the younger student. It really does. There are terrific pedagogues here in Sarasota, people with tremendous training. I don't have any degree in pedagogy. Again, as you saw from my experience, it's all kind of a hands-on drawing on what I learned trying to play myself that now informs how I teach. But there are really, the art of teaching is a real skill and a real talent that some people have. Some people in the room have tremendous talent at that, that should be giving this lecture perhaps instead of me. I almost didn't accept this because I thought, I'm not the right person to do this. But here we are. So I really, really, really love teaching my adults. Seniors are absolutely the best students. The group of students that I see every couple of weeks now, it's just the greatest group. I mean, absolutely every one of them. It's a pleasure to spend that hour together when we do. They're intelligent, they're informed, they're focused, they know what they want, they have goals. By and large, the stresses of life, career, family are behind them now. They're at a different point in time. And above all, I have very little, if any, obligation to provide the motivational aspect. It's a tremendous talent to be able to motivate a 7, an 8, a 9, a 10, or even more so, a 15-year-old to spend a couple hours a day at the piano. That really takes some skill. And frankly, I don't want to do that now. I've been asked to teach some younger students, and I generally refer them. We have other fine teachers here. The Sarasota Music Conservatory is experiencing tremendous growth right now. They're just about to or have just moved into a larger facility. They have wonderful string faculty, and they're now building their piano faculty up all the time. I know some very fine teachers there. So there are other people better to deal with the children than me. Anyway, I really like the adult students, and it's the most satisfying teaching, frankly, I've ever done. I really enjoy all of them very much. Now, this brings me to my purpose, which I think is really maybe the most important thing I'll say all day. In many ways, I'm very clear that when I approach each new student, the purpose of what I'm trying to do is not make them play louder, faster, longer, harder. I honestly don't care about that at all. My purpose is to bring them closer to the emotional and personal expression that music provides. Now, as a corollary to that, I can improve their technique. I can try to teach them new musical styles or new concepts of timing and musicality, or I can try to help them get over the fear of playing, all kinds of different things. But the purpose is to allow, as soon as possible, I think it's important, as quickly as possible, to get the student connected to some level of musical expression. And that really remains my focus all the time. And sometimes maybe to the fault of not stressing scales and arpeggios and exercises, maybe not at the stage we don't need it to do it as much, or it's not the priority, we may need to do it. But getting to the essence of musical expression and making that available to us and to those then that we share our music with. It's really important, and I think that's the goal. Let's see if I Fine. Now, before we start talking about the benefits, I'm going to take a break and have some more music and invite Arthur to come up, introduce himself briefly, and play a little more Rachmaninoff for us.
I was enjoying the lecture. The benefit of this is you get to take your mask off.
Yep.
So a little bit about who I am and where I came from. Anybody here from Portland, Maine? She. Look at you. Oh.
I have a son, Elizabeth.
Oh, well, let's go.
We do too?
Okay. Yeah, so anyway, I grew up in Portland and lived there all my life, except for a little time away in college and the Navy in the 1960s. Kate and I raised 3 children there, who are now a bit scattered. They're all over the world. We followed, the reason we're here in Florida, like a lot of people, we followed Kate's parents down here. They are since gone, but we stay here because each of us has a life here that we've kind of grown into, and this life with the music connections. So my piano tune puts me in touch with Barbara, and then it's out of control. So Barbara makes connections. You gotta meet Tom. Anyway, so that's how I came to here. This gets to a little bit about the expression and the emotion of music. My career was in investment research and management. We try to take emotion out of the decision making. It's a very objective, data-driven analysis, and so I have a little handicap there. I did retire in 2010. I serve on a lot of committees. One committee I serve on, I have 2 Zoom meetings this afternoon, and the second one is as a board member and treasurer of the Portland Conservatory of Music in Maine, which just moved into new space thanks to a $1 million donation from one of our benefactors. And it's a former Presbyterian church that makes great performance space, and we have a lot of studio space in there as well, and good faculty. My mother was a pianist. She grew up in a musical family, and we always had a small band in our house, and it was just natural. There were 5 of us. 2 of us ended up playing the piano reasonably seriously at a young age. And so I began lessons with a friend of hers who was a very good, disciplined teacher, Priscilla Morneau. She went to the New England Conservatory of Music. So my music with her, it was over 40 years I was with her, and provided a strong foundation. The only time I took off really was, again, college and a little time in the Navy. But played over the years, and it doesn't get any easier because there's a spring recital every year, and every year you get just about as nervous having to sit down and play for others as I do now. She passed away at 95 years old, and not maybe 6 months before she passed away, we had a recital of her adult students who had stayed with her all those years. So I had 6 months off. I started up with another teacher, Jackie Goyden, again, well-trained, very fiery person. Tried to bring out the emotion and the passion. And I think Tom would attest that she kind of failed at that, so Tom's so I was with her for 18 years. She passed away. So when I came to Tom, I said, I'm not sure you want to take this assignment. You're my 3rd teacher. But he's younger than I am, so I hope that lasts a long time. So I've been with Tom going on 4 years, and I am learning all the time. So things I have learned are You have to breathe when you're playing. He takes the approach of a singer. You have to take the time, pause, let the note dissipate, and you have to communicate the feeling. That's the hard part. So we're always learning and growing. So the piece I'm playing today was new to me. There's so much music available. These are the Etudes Tableau, Rachmaninoff, Opus 33, number 3. Numbers 4, 5, and 6 are for virtuosos, I understand, so we leave those aside. And the tableau is a picture. When I play it, I think it's not a picture or a painting, it's something in motion over time. And the mood changes, the motion through time, and so I kind of think of it as the blossoms on my shirt. Is a day in the life of a blossom, and it comes to life slowly. The mood changes. It reaches the blossom phase, and then it kind of dies off again for the night. And that's what I think of when I play this piece.
let me just say, I was under the impression that I was supposed to fill up 90 minutes, so that's why we still have more music. Joy has very kindly pointed out to me that some people may need to leave at 11:30. That's perfectly fine, we understand. Please don't be shy. If you've got to get up and go, get up and go. We appreciate you being here for the first hour of this. And I will move it along so that we can enjoy the rest of the music. I'll keep this simple.
Thank you. It was a wonderful program.
Thank you very much. Let me just move this slide along. More. Okay, so we're going to move sort of quickly because I think they're somewhat obvious, but there's one thing in particular I want to focus on, but the benefits of playing piano at our age. Look, the first and foremost thing and the most important thing is that it should be fun. Let's not forget that it's fun. Music is a universal language like math. It's one of those languages that cuts across all cultures, all languages, all parts of the world. Even I think when they send these little time capsules out into space, there's always music on them. Mozart, Bach, something of that sort. So music is a wonderful thing to be in touch with, and it's a lot of fun. Music can be therapeutic. It can relieve stress. Now, everyone playing today would not agree that there's no stress, but it's a different kind of stress that it relieves. It relieves the kind of stress from your day-to-day life. I've had many times in my life when the events of my life were difficult, and the most constant and reassuring part of every day was the hours I spent at the piano. It brought me focus, it took me away from my troubles and my problems. And so it can be very emotional and help with that and that kind of comfort that it brings to people. I have to say, I had a funny story, and I'm going to move, I promise. But at Piano Grand, Susan and I played a marvelous little duet from the opera Cavalleria Rusticana together. It was probably the easiest piece on the program for anyone to play, but it was still lovely and we enjoyed playing it. I got home and had an email immediately that evening from a friend of mine who was there and said how beautiful it was and he enjoyed the entire concert. He said, but the minute you started playing that, I started crying. And he said, it suddenly brought up my mother and all the enormous sacrifices she had made for my life. And he said, I sat there and cried through the entire thing. So you never know. Music can be so helpful and so therapeutic and so comforting to other people. And, you know, it does, in a way, connect things in our brains that aren't conscious sometimes. It brings them together and makes them better. Piano playing can be good for your social life because here's a group, and we won't dwell on it. If you need more information about this later, we can get it. But there is an extensive network in our area, from Tampa on down to Venice and below, of musical organizations. Some are smaller, some are larger, some have limits, some don't, some focus on a different group, but there are many, many groups that get together monthly and play for one another. The Piano Friends 2 has as many as 30 people in it sometimes, so they have to limit their stuff. Others are smaller and meet in homes, but each has its own social component. At our time in life, it's nice to put the music and the socializing together and enjoy those things at the same time. There's a new program at the one at State College called Piano Peeps. It's especially fun because they have a beautiful new recital hall at State College of Florida in Bradenton with a nice Steinway piano and a lovely hall that seats 150. It's perfect for small recitals and gatherings like that. The biggest and most important benefit, though, that I think is on some people's minds is that playing piano does a lot, I'll use some big terms here, for neuroplasticity and cognition. More and more scientific studies are coming forward and being done that prove the connection and the value of playing music. Playing piano is a full brain workout. It's not like one part, it's everything. I've got here, I'll make the notes quick, but the occipital lobe of your brain is involved in reading music and pitch and rhythm. The temporal lobe processes sound. The frontal lobe attends to the music, weeds out distractions, and remembers the music you're playing. The parietal lobe integrates everything coming in. That's an enormous job. Each one of these people playing the piano today, the ears are hearing, that's sending messages to the brain. The eyes are seeing, that's sending messages. The skin is feeling, that is sending information. The muscles, the tendons, everything involved in the body are all functioning, all sending information to the brain at one time that must be coordinated and looped together. But you're looping together every part of your brain at once. Almost nothing else does that as effectively as playing a musical instrument like this, like the piano, like that. So that's a very important thing. And then when you add to that the emotional part of our brains, you really have stimulated everything. And it's great for cognition, their studies are saying now that it can retard dementia or prevent dementia. It helps us with our small motor and large motor skills. It helps overall body health and movement. There are so many things. I'm sure there are many wonderful dissertations and big scientific papers being presented about this. But in the back of all our minds, whether we're just having fun at the piano or not, if it helps improve the quality of our life and our brain function and brain health at this age, that is a tremendous benefit and a plus for all of us. It's a whole brain workout, and it's really worth it. It's time well spent. Now, let's have a quick workout. I'm going to invite John Wondrasch to come up and play something a little lighthearted. One of the good things about, come on, John, and get situated. One of the good things about that process, whether you're playing Bach, Beethoven, or Brahms, or just heart and soul and chopsticks, it's the same process. The brain is happy. So it's whatever you're playing, you get to find the repertoire that you like, and you still get the benefits of it.
My name is John Wondrasch. I was born in the South Bronx, New York, and at a very young age we moved out to Long Island, where I went to high school, then to college, and I became a teacher of technology and then a chairman in that department. And I had a couple of small businesses that I ran while I was doing that. I never really had time for a musical instrument. I had a career and a business, kept me busy. And, but I've always enjoyed the sound of a piano. I was always marveled at how they can move their hands back and forth effortlessly and just create wonderful music. So when I retired, I was looking around for things to do, something to do, and I happened to walk into, about 5 years ago, a thrift store, and they had a Clavinova piano, model 25, which was about 25, 30 years old. I live in a condo, and so I really can't have an acoustic piano. I need something I can put headphones on and not disturb everybody around me. So I started doing that, and when I bought that piano at the thrift store, it came with a lot of music. And one of the things that I had was a series of instructional books called John Thompson. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. So I started with John Thompson and worked with that and hand-in exercises a little bit. And of course, some very simple sheet music, tunes that somebody can listen to. But I realized after about 1.5 years, almost 2 years, I was teaching myself a lot of bad habits. One of the things I thought you played the piano like this, just like you're on typing. Don't move the wrist, don't move anything. Terrible habit I got into. So I ended up deciding I'm going to need to get some instruction on it. And a friend of mine happened to see in a paper an article about piano friends. And she said, why don't you call them, talk with them, and maybe get involved and do whatever you need. So I did, and I ended up joining Piano Friends and then eventually 4 other piano groups. There are lots of them in the area. At that point, I met Tom, I was introduced to Tom. He graciously said he would take me on. I said, I don't know anything about it. It's 1.5 years of self-taught. Wonderful, wonderful teacher. So the biggest fear I have about piano is what I'm doing right now. Some people will tell you when I first started about a couple of years ago, I could do a tremolo without even trying. But anyway, I've gotten somewhat better, but still the nerves are still there. Some people say it could take a little bit longer. All right. What I'm about to play is Scott Chaplin's Maple Leaf Rag. Where's middle C? Okay.
So we talked about all the good things. Let's be honest and admit that there are some challenges to playing the piano at our age. One can be something as simple as arthritis. It happens, it comes. You keep playing, you keep it at bay. It's a good thing. The real issues for the adult student usually, and maybe for any student, but is that progress comes at a slower rate than they want or expect. Piano progress is made in periods of 6 months, a year, not 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. That's a hard thing to accept sometimes, but it's the truth, it's the way we advance, it's the way we improve. So that's important. Students are impatient. They want to be better than they are. You have to accept what the process is and what it's like. I think, and I've seen this with many students, we reach this time in life, if we're lucky enough to be here, and we've had our successes. We have accomplished things with our families, or our careers, or our endeavors in life, and we stop doing the things we're not good at, primarily. I don't play games or competitive sports. I hate it. I stopped doing that 30 years ago. You know, I can grow things, I can play piano, I can cook. I do those things. The things that I have not been successful in life are gone at this point. So it's sometimes very difficult mentally to return to being a beginner again, or being at a lower level than you would like to be in something. I think that's an age-specific issue, and I do the best I can to instill patience and stuff for that. But you know, you've got to accept you are going to make mistakes. Making mistakes doesn't mean you're not good. It means you're normal. You know, it's part of the process. It's part of what we do, and it's important like that. You need to keep your perspective and your patience and your goals in mind. Be realistic about what you can accomplish. You can always go to YouTube and hear someone play it faster, louder, and more spectacularly than you or I will ever play it. That's okay. That's not the standard, and that's not the goal. Back to my purpose. John right there, very connected. I looked around the room, lots of toes tapping, lots of toes. He's communicating. He's sending out his joy of that piece to you, and we get it, and we share it, and we enjoy it. That's the purpose. That's the goal. I'm going to move quickly along. I'm going to invite Sandy Hunt up. Sandy, say just a few words, because I'm sorry to cut you short, but I'm stretching the time limit, and I want to get the rest of our music in. Sandy's going to play the meditation from Thais.
Good morning. This is a very, very shortened presentation. Can't put your life into that much time. But anyway, I've been playing the piano most of my life. I was self-taught until the 7th grade. Not a good idea. As you've heard before, you pick up a lot of bad habits. I finally got to a teacher when I was about 7th grade, took lessons for 2 years, then didn't play again until several years later. I inherited my grandmother's piano, and that prompted me to take lessons. I was married to a military man, and we traveled and moved 27 times. And every place I went, I tried to find a teacher. So I counted up, I had 9 teachers over the years, and included in that were some teachers at the University of Hawaii and the University of Maryland. Then my husband retired, and I went to work, and didn't play much for 16 years, and just took it up. About 3 years ago, I decided I really wanted to get back to classical music. So I found Tom, who is just a wonderful teacher. He informs, he inspires, and he challenges at every lesson. I'm going to play, as he said, meditation from Thais, an opera by Massenet.
final duet, just a few minutes of something fun. I had some tips, but I think we've covered all that enough in the other things. I was just going to kind of summarize it together. But we're going to have fun here with some popular music from the musical Phantom of the Opera. And playing duets or ensembles, sometimes even 3 or 4 at a piano, can be a tremendous amount of fun. So Barbara and Sandy are fortunate enough to be neighbors and be able to practice together easily and regularly. So we're going to hear this duet to wrap it up today. Thanks very much for all being here. Sorry to keep you a little bit late. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.